One of the legendary houses in the history of modern architecture is Richard Neutra's Kaufmann Desert House. Let's take a look at this seminal work and why it is important. I'm Michael Knorr with Architecture Minute. Richard Neutra was born in Vienna in 1892. His career is interconnected with many other 20th century cultural influencers. Neutra studied under architect Adolph Loos in Vienna. Loos was an early polemicist for modern architecture, writing provocative essays like Ornament and Crime. In 1921, he worked for Erich Mendelsohn in Berlin, a modern expressionist most famous for his design of the Einstein Tower in Germany. By 1923, he had moved to the United States and worked for a while with Lloyd Wright. He then joined Rudolph Schindler, another Wright protege, in Schindler's communal Kings Road house in Los Angeles. By the 1930s, Neutra headed his own office, nurturing apprentices who went on to successful careers developing the new architecture that became known as mid-century modern. Harwell Hamilton Harris, Raphael Soriano, and Gregory Ayn. Practicing in LA, Neutra also developed Hollywood contacts that led to a house design for the great director Josef von Sternberg, a house that was later owned by screenwriter and novelist Ayn Rand. All of these interlocking influences eventually led to his iconic Kaufmann Desert House in 1946. You will recognize the Kaufmann name. Edgar Kaufmann was the client for another important work of 20th century architecture, Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water in 1935. At the end of World War II, Kaufmann decided to build a winter retreat in Palm Springs, California. To Wright's chagrin, Kaufmann hired Richard Neutra to design it. Kaufmann felt Wright did not understand the desert, an interesting opinion since Wright had already built his own desert retreat in Arizona. Fortunately, we have Neutra's interpretation of desert modern architecture in the Kaufmann Desert House. Wright criticized it as flimsy and insubstantial, though he later grudgingly admitted it was a beautiful work of architecture. Why is the Kaufmann Desert House important? Early Palm Springs had turned to Spanish Revival architecture as the appropriate desert style. Neutra, along with a handful of other early modernists, paved the way for a different approach. We see in Neutra's design not so much a compromise, but rather a rapprochement between organic modern architecture and the international style. Rough natural materials like stone are used side by side with slick materials like glass and steel. The permeability between inside and outside, the view capturing walls of glass, the focus on patios, swimming pools, and desert landscaping. What Wright criticized as flimsy actually advanced a refreshing transparency in architecture and a new way of living with nature. The Kaufmann Desert House is the epitome of Palm Springs modernism. Its influence is ongoing and inspires architects to this day.